We've made it all the way to video 3 of this full install of the 6000 XPs behind me, along with the batteries, the indoor wall mount from EG4, the conduit, which makes it all nice and clean. Everything is just coming together. At this point, we've hung everything on the wall. We've got the boxes built. Everything is in place. The wires for the batteries are connected. The batteries should be communicating to one another. But now it's time to do what I think is the fun part. And this is where we're going to connect the AC wires together. And we're going to go from the grid to the inverters, and from the inverters back to the load panel. Follow along. It's going to be great. Let's jump into it. So the last thing that I've done here is I went ahead and I connected my conduit boxes. And this, man, I tell you what, this was a bit of a maze trying to figure out how to make it work. This is probably not the correct way to do it, but it's going to keep everything in conduit, making it into my boxes. So I've got my my nut on this right here, and then this is glued together. I've got this box here where I'll be able to pull and make my 90, and then I'm going to be able to come back again into here. So if you're not familiar with the setup, what's going to happen is this is my grid input. The grid comes from my meter. Over here we've got our L1 and L2, and I should probably, while I'm doing this, go ahead and switch those. This was left over from last time. I had red on the left, and L1 is red. I think I'm going to switch that. So anyhow, we've got L1 and L2 and neutral coming from the meter, and then that's going to come into these three 40 amp breakers right here. And those breakers are going to send back out and down into this cabinet here. And then those are going to land on each of these grid, center one actually, the grid breakers. So we're going to do that one and that one. So I'll come through here, and then we're going to send grid out, which is going to be the load, and the load is going to go back in here all along these boxes, come into this hole along this up here, and then land on these three breakers. So that is what we're going to do next. In the past, I have used different types of wire, and actually I've got them all right here. We've got just piles of, got some aluminum. I think this is 6 gauge. I've got the SOW right here, which I really enjoy, but it doesn't really meet code. And then once we put it into the conduit box, it's going to have other issues. I've used pretty much everything other than what I'm technically supposed to, which is THHN going through conduit. So I decided that I'm going to basically set it up to where we just utilize one giant spool. And that's what I did. I just bought a huge spool of black THHN. This is 8 gauge stranded, and we are going to run this through the entire circuit, and we will just, we're going to cut it off where we need to cut it. Of course, it comes out really nice in the spool, and then we will mark it the colors that we need. I printed out a whole bunch of labels. So that's going to help out a lot. We're going to go ahead and start with a ground. So I'm going to take this guy here, and of course I'm also going to put some green on here, because the green is going to make it all a little bit easier just to make sure we know exactly what this is. I'm going to take it, run it through the conduit. Alright, so we're going to take this down and back up. Oh, this is 8. I'm like, why isn't this thing coming off? Because that's a 10 gauge max. And this is stranded, so I should probably put a ferrule on it. I can get away with these 7s. Nice. I don't understand why the Eaton neutrals come backed out, but the grounds do not. probably can't see anything that I'm doing right now. All right, so we've got that coming through here. And then it's going to come up into the ground. Okay, so we've got our first connection made. So that's something. Got our ground going through all the way over here. We should probably go ahead and connect our grounds first for each of these inverters. I've got the grounds connected to each of these over here into this panel, and we are going to torque these down. Now, all of the AC connections on the 6000 XPs, whether it's the grounds or the neutral or the L1 and L2s, are going to be 18 inch-pounds. Next, we're going to run our neutrals, and then we will come back and do our AC in and our AC out. Don't forget to color code these. And then I'm also going to grab one of my little printer tags here. I really love having this little printer. So what, buying a ferrule kit that has all the different sizes was a big plus for me. That looks just right. There we go. I'm trying on this one to make these look as nice as possible. I'm not going to spend 6 hours trying to make everything straight. There's one side. All right, so now we've got the neutral on these two. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up on these two, and then we'll come back. We've got our neutrals tied in over here, here, and here. And then they're going up over here, try to make them as nice and clean as possible. They're all labeled. We've got our inverter 1, inverter 2, inverter 3. Oh, I got that upside down, that's funny. Need to torque these down. Don't forget that step. Okay, 18 pounds. All right, good. That one's good. And that one's good. Next, we're gonna move on to our grid in. So that's going to be AC in, grid. It's going to be this middle one. And that's going to come from inverter 1, inverter 2, and inverter 3. If all of this is still just like a little over your head and you're like, I don't feel comfortable with the wires and the AC and DC and what's the difference, volts, amps, you know, current and ohms and all of that. So I have put together an entire series. I'm 2 videos into at this point. I'm constantly adding more. And it is all about the beginner knowledge that I wish I knew whenever I first started all of this. So I try to break down all of the stuff that is just kind of out there theory that you don't know or you might not even know you need to know. And I make it to where this is actionable stuff that we can use for off-grid solar. So I'm going to link to that here, and it's going to be actually, yeah, right over here. And it's also going to be at the end and in the description. So let's keep going. First, we're going to start with our L1, which is going to be black. I changed this over to the right, to the reds on the right, instead of on the left now. I will still change, or I'll change this over at some other point, but that's at a later date, and it's unrelated at the moment. L1 is going to be black on the left. This one's going to be easier because we don't have to tape it up. So we're simply going to strip this guy back a little bit. There it goes. Grab our ferrule, stick it on, crimp it, and then of course we do need to go, let's see, that's L1 grid, so we'll take that. Going right there. Over here, same thing as we've done before. There it is. Then we're going to land it on this breaker here. And it's going to be, actually it's going to be on the top. Because as you can see, this goes along here and it goes into this bus bar. So this is L1, this is L2. Fold this back about here. And bring that down to about here. Try not to shock myself while I do this. That'd be fun. All right, now the sides of each of these breakers are going to tell you what your torque value is. And this one says 25 inch-pounds. If this breaker is on, this is going to be hot. It's not on at the moment, but I'm going to go ahead and use what am I doing here? It's tough to see what I'm doing. There we go. I don't really have enough room in here. Okay, I'll come back and I'll torque it down in a minute. But that is my L1. Now we'll come back and land it right here on L1. All right, get this guy in here. It's right here. I'm going to start off with this screwdriver, then we'll come back and torque it up. So all of these are still 18, so I've still got it on 18. There we go. All right, I'm going to get all of these torqued down, and then we'll come back and torque down this one. All right, so now we've got all three of our L1s from the grid. This is our meter coming in here. We've got our grid L1 for our first inverter, second inverter, and third inverter. Now the next thing is we're going to connect in our L2s, and those are going to be our red. And the L2s are going to go right here on each of these inverters. All right, so now we've got our L2 on our inverter 1, I1, L2 grid. Right here, I1, L2 grid, and that's going right here to the grid port, and it is our right side. So now I'm going to go ahead and wire these up, and then I'll be right back. All right, that looks clean. So we've got our L2, L1, L2, L1, L2, L1, L2, L1. It's our grid in. Then we've got the same going here, here, and here. I did clean things up and move around some holes a little bit. One thing to note is somehow I'm missing a little black plug, so I'll put this guy in here just so I don't have any abrasive spots here. So anyway, that's it. Now we're going to move on to the AC out, which is going to be the load side, and that's going to go to this panel over here. So this is going to be my load panel, and I've got these 40 amp breakers here. And so from there, I've got the same L1 and L2. And as we trace it up, it's going to be very similar to the other side. So this panel, now that I've redone these and it looks pretty nice and clean, I'm kind of frustrated with my sloppy work on some of these others, but I guess that's where we're at. Let's get started. We're going to take the inverter 1 L1 and we're going to put it over here. This one's a little more complicated just due to how I've run this conduit. So we're going to go through this hole and then bend it around back into this hole. This would definitely be easier if I wasn't recording and I was using my right hand, so there we go. Oh man, all right, good, I got one. Finally got it out of there, all right. So then we're going up. Found it. All right, now I'm gonna put this somewhere so it doesn't get messed up. Touch something else. So we're gonna look right here and we need to figure out, is this L1 or is this L1? And so we're gonna rock this breaker back, being real careful not to touch anything. And we can see that this guy here goes up and to the top one. So just like over here, L1 is on the top because it connects right there. Over here, L1 is on the top as well. So I'm going to get this over. It's going to go in right here. I'm going to bend it. And then it's going to come down to about here. I'm going to bend that over as well, so a little too far. Let's get that all figured out right there. So that's going to be our L1 for inverter 1. And it's black, so we don't need to do a whole lot there. All right, so now we've got our L1 and L2 connected to our inverter 1 down through the conduit, over and up, L1, L2, and we're ready to go. Now, remember, we do still have to go back and retorque all of these. So I'm going to do L1 and L2 on the load on inverter 2 and on inverter 3, 4 more wires, and then all we have left to do is the parallel communications. And then we are ready to start these things up. All right, so Buddy's got the L1 going on. Gotta back it off a little bit. Sometimes they get pretty hard to get in there unless you really back them all the way out. And you'll notice he's gonna go all the way, he's gonna get it tight, and then he backs it off just a little bit, and then goes a little bit tighter. And then that allows you to get just a little bit tighter. So running that over here, this is our L1, and we're gonna land it right here. Okay, so we have got all of our connections made. Now we're gonna go through and we're gonna make sure that we've got them torqued properly. We're looking for 18 inch-pounds. Now be super careful that you are not using foot-pounds, because, well, that would be wrong. And you would end up causing problems, but we're going for inch-pounds, so right there. I'm gonna hit it and back off a little bit. All right, look for it here. Hit it, back off, hit it one more time, and it skips over. Having a good torque screwdriver like this is super valuable. And again, I'm going to mention I've got links in the description below for everything. Next, we have to get up here and we're going to do 25. If you look on the side of the breaker, it'll tell you the gauge wire that you're using, and it'll tell you what you actually need to torque it down to. So I'm going to go 25. As it says, for 8 gauge. And I've already got that one there. All right. And I'll do it the other side. So I want to point out I only have one ground, and it is running over here, and it's going to this panel. What I say one ground, only one ground per inverter. I don't see how it is necessary for me to ground to this panel and to ground to this panel when these panels are both bonded together through a ground strap. And then also the same for neutral. I've got this big neutral bar. I've got this big neutral bar right here, and it's connecting these two. So I don't see why I need to run a neutral into each of these. I think by the book, you need to have one going to each. So there is that. However, what I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run a ground from here down to this ground bolt back here. So I should have done that whenever it was easier to get to, but I'm going to go ahead and do it now. There is, however, continuity between this case and this case. I don't know exactly how it's getting there, other than I'm guessing it's going through the battery and making it to it based on the hook that's on there. But this is, I did check continuity between these two, and we do have it. All right, so I've got this 10 gauge wire right here. We're gonna go ahead and connect it. And it just sure is nice having these strippers back. I'm gonna use 10 gauge ferrules. So this is gonna come up through here. And then we're just gonna run it in like that. Of course, this is still set to 25, so let's back it back off to 18. And my phone died, so I didn't record it. But what I'm doing is I'm connecting a ground between the inverter and the battery, and I'm using the little fork connectors, and I'm going to one of the screws on the batteries, as you'll see in the next frame. All right, so now that we have got all the wiring for the AC in, the AC out, the batteries, and the grounding and the neutrals, we are going to now shift over to the paralleling communications. And the first thing that we need to do is check the dip switches. And so over here on the first inverter, we're going to want both of these two pins over here, all the way in the back. They need to both be in the up position. Now the way this works is the first and the last need to be in the up position. So now we're going to look over here at this one, and these two are up, but we want them to both be down. So I'm going to move them both to down. We have down, down. And then we're going to move over to the last one. Apparently I've got these out of order from where I had them the first time. And these two need to be up, up. All right, so both the first inverter and the last inverter are going to be up, up, and the middle or anything in between is going to be down, down. The next thing that we need to do is connect the battery paralleling cables, and they look like Ethernet. I'm not sure if they have the same pinouts, but we're going to go and connect these. We're going to first connect all the way on the left to all the way on the right. So we're going to come over here. I'm going to run up through one of these holes. All right, first thing we're going to do is look for the parallel, and we've got our battery communications port here. Then we're going to go to this first one on the left. So, or really it's the middle one, but it's the left of the two parallel ports. Okay, then we're going to run through the conduit, and we're going to go all the way to the last inverter here. Okay, I'm actually going to come up through the battery hole because I'm kind of running out of room. Now on this side, we're going to go into the far right bottom port. So we've got the far right bottom, or the right parallel port, going all the way to the left parallel port, which is the center. All right, now we're going to connect these two inverters. So back up through the port. We're going to connect right in here to the next available, the right parallel port. Then we're going to run back through the conduit to the next box again. Now we're going to come up next to the battery cables. Seems to be the easiest spot. None of it comes through super easy though. Now this one is going to go into the left port. So we come out of this right port and we go into the left. Then we're going to come out of the right and we're going to go into the left. We're going to go to the right side of the middle inverter. We're going to go into the left parallel port on the farthest inverter. And that is it. Now we just go through the commissioning process. That was a lot of fun, a lot of AC wiring, and it's a little confusing, but hey, you know what? Overall, it's not that bad. So if you are enjoying this, if you're finding value in it, I would appreciate if you would help me out by shopping through my links. And I'm going to put that right here. And of course, all the other places, the QR code, and then there's this thing right here at the end. Also, the next video will be right here as soon as it's live.
I'm Eric with East Texas Homestead, encouraging you to live faithfully and prepare thoroughly for good times and bad. See you on the next one.